We got some visitors here today, and it just letting y'all know I ain't no real preacher. It just happened to be my time. I'm going to tell y'all a funny story. I've told a couple of people here already, but it's worth telling everybody. It happened right here in this audience. I got a friend I studied the Bible with a good bit. He called me the other day and he said, Flynn, I was over at church where I go, and now they came and visited with us 3 or 4 months ago, and he said, I was over at the church talking about visiting with y'all. And I said, yeah? What'd you say? He said, well, we talked about music. And he said, I told them that I come over there with y'all, and y'all went to singing, and it was the prettiest singing I've ever heard. And he said, in fact, it moved me. And he said, I told them y'all didn't have no piano, you didn't have no guitars or none of that stuff. He said, all y'all done was had one man that went up in the front of the building and blowed a whistle, and everybody started singing. So John's got a nickname of Whistle Man now. So anyway, I'm going to tell you, in the Old Testament, God uses people. And He used prophets. He used the prophets to prove that He was God a lot of times. And today, we're going to talk about that. There were a lot of gods back then. Everybody had a god that they worshiped. And before I start, I'll tell you that when I read the Bible, I do what I call filling in the blanks. For instance, if I said that Scott Vincent killed a deer at 200 yards, you know he didn't shoot it with a pistol or a bow and arrow because it's too far. You'd almost have to cipher that he killed it with a rifle and a real good scope, and he was a propping on something when he shot it. So that's what I mean. So this story I'm going to tell you takes about 2 minutes to read it. It'll take us a little bit longer to talk about it this morning. It don't take anything away from the Bible. It don't add anything. It just makes it seem like we're talking about real people, which we are. Sometimes we don't think people that we read in the Bible are real, but they are. They thought like we did. They had the same problems we did. I'm going to talk about this morning. It's a group of people involved, but there's one main character. And I'm going to tell y'all some characteristics of this fella and see if y'all can cipher out who it is before I get to the punchline. He's second in command of a country. He's a commander of an army. He's a great warrior. This is a tough nut now. He's a man of valor. He's married, got a good wife. His wife loves him. The king that he's directly under loves him. All of his men love him. He's got everything going for him except one thing. He's got leprosy. Now, maybe some of y'all ciphered out who it was. I know Jason did, because anybody that can stand up here and teach Revelations, that's a gimme for him. This guy's name is Naaman. And I want y'all to look. It's going to be important at the end of this to know what Naaman looks like. Turn that thing on. Here's a guy in a chariot. Now, Naaman probably had on a little 3-sided hat, covered his ears and his neck, a helmet and a vest, and you can look up there. They had all kind of vests that went around them to protect them. Some of them was made out of woven chain, some of them was like that, was just a piece of metal, and some of them was real thick leather. Naaman probably, if you saw Naaman, the only thing that you could see about Naaman was his face, because he had leprosy. If we went off somewhere and we had our arms broke out in open sores and whelps, we'd probably cover them up. Naaman wasn't no different. Naaman more than likely had that covered up. And Naaman rode in a chariot, more than likely. Now, they had chariots and they had horses and they had people on foot soldiers, but Naaman probably rode in a chariot. That's a little old short wagon with 2 wheels. You put all your knives and guns and weapons in there, you know. You can cut that off if you want to. But that's what Naaman rode in. And I think that's going to be important. Naaman is fixing to go on a raid. They live in Syria, and he's fixing to ease across the border into Israel and raid them. They did that all the time back in those days. And this ain't the first time Naaman's been on a raid. It ain't the first time he's been in a battle. But it's the first time that God is with Naaman. I don't know if Naaman knows that God's with him. I think Naaman actually finds out God is with him later on down the line. But I don't think he knows that God is with him right now. Naaman eases across the border and goes over there in Israel, and they go to raiding them. And now Naaman can have anybody he wants to as a slave, because he's going to get him one. But he picks this little old girl out. She probably was a little teenager. Something special about her that made him pick her out, but you got to remember, God's got his hand in this. So he picks this little old girl out. She ain't got no name in the Bible. I'm going to call her Mary. So he takes Mary back and he gives her to his wife as a slave. So now you got to remember, Mary came from Israel. She more than likely worshiped God, but for a fact, she knew the miracles that God had performed through the prophets. She knowed that all the time. So she comes back and she spends some time with Naaman's wife, and I don't know how long it was, but it was a good while, because they became real good friends and had a real close, trusting bond. And I'm sure that Mary has told Naaman's wife everything she knows about God, and probably everything else, because you get two women in a house, they go talk about everything. Now, there come a time when Naaman's probably having a rough time with this leprosy he's got. And it is a bad thing. So, Mary tells Naaman's wife, she says, look, I know somebody that can cure him over in Samaria. Now, for Naaman's wife to believe her, you know it had to be a close, trusting bond. So she tells Naaman. Naaman jumps right on it. He says, yeah, I'd love to try it. And let me tell you why Naaman wants to try it. Naaman is desperate. He's desperate. He has prayed to his gods, you know, time and time again, and he's still got leprosy. Now let me tell you, Naaman's got a good dose of leprosy, because God's going to heal him at the end. We know that. God don't heal no little dose of leprosy. But I'm going to tell you how desperate Naaman was. True life deal. Years ago, I was a wallpaper hanger. And I was over there in Bessemer hanging wallpaper for some real rich people. And I was in the room working, and their little old boy come running down the steps, and he looked like about 13, skinny as a rail, and he looked awful. All he had on was a little old pair of underwear. He was broke out in open sores and whelps and risings and boils. Y'all, these young people don't know what boils are. We was talking the other day. They ain't got no idea. But he was just broke out. It was awful looking. And his mama told me they was a-fixing to go to somewhere around Africa over there to a witch doctor to get well. And I thought, you've bumped your head, lady. What's wrong with you? And she went to telling me. She says, we have gone to every doctor that we know about. We've spent more money than you can imagine, and the doctors are telling us they can't cure him. They don't know what's wrong with him. It was pitiful. So that's where Naaman is. Naaman's in the same shape. He's desperate. He's going to try anything. So they tell Naaman, Mary said that you go over in Samaria, there's somebody over there can cure you. Well, he's ready to go, so he goes to the king, because he's got to get permission. He tells the king, look, this is what that little old girl's told us, and I'd like to try it. Well, the king said, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Since you want to go, I'll back you all the way. He said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll write the king over a letter. And I'll not only do that, I'll send a bunch of money and a bunch of clothes and all kind of stuff to let them know we really appreciate anything y'all can do for us. So they did. He loaded all that stuff up. He got in that chariot, had all that battle stuff on, and had his army with him, his men, and they go over. Well, when they get over, I don't think Naaman gave the letter to the king. I think he gave it to one of the guys out there in the front. And I'll tell you why. He gives this letter to the guy. He goes in there and he tells the king, he says, that guy Naaman's out there that's been raiding us. And he's got a letter here for you. Well, the king opens that letter, and this is basically what it said. I'm sending my man Naaman over there, cure him of leprosy. Well, the king looks at that letter, and at first he couldn't believe it. And then he says, how in the world can I cure him of leprosy? I'm not God. And then it come to him. There's Naaman out there with his army. They know I can't do this. This is going to be a fuss. And it's going to be an argument, and then it's going to be a fight. So he is upset now. He's worried to death. Now, they had a ritual over there back in. All of them done it. If they got upset, they'd tear their clothes. Well, he went to tearing his clothes. And I don't understand that. But I often thought if somebody could sew real good over there, they'd have a good job. Because they all done it. Well, he went to tearing his clothes. Well, word got out. And I don't know how long it took, but it got back to Elijah. He probably didn't live too far from there. Well, it got back to Elijah, and Elijah's got him a slave, and his name is Gehazi. That's how I say it. That might not be right. But he tells Gehazi, go over and tell the king, quit tearing your clothes. Send him over here, and we'll prove that there's a prophet here in Israel. So he goes over and he tells the king, my master said you ain't got to be tearing your clothes up. Come over, send him over there. Y'all heard that story, pass the buck. That's what's fixing to happen right now. The king goes out there and tells Naaman, I ain't the one you were looking for. It ain't me. You done give the wrong guy the letter. This guy over yonder, his name's Elijah. I'll tell you right where to go. So he tells him, so Naaman loads up again. And here he goes. He goes over there. Now, let me tell you, when he was riding over, he knows when he gets there what's going to happen. This man that he ain't never seen is going to run out and praise him, tell him what a great guy he is, and he's going to wave his arms and call on his God and cure him. That ain't even close to what happened. He gets over there in front of old Elijah's house, and old Gehazi looks out the window and says, here, master. Elijah's probably sitting back there in a chair. He's kind of a different character anyway. And he tells Gehazi, go out there and tell him, keep on going down the road, find the Jordan, dip 7 times, you'll be okay. Clean you up. I can't imagine Gehazi wanting to do that. Now think about it. Gehazi ain't wanting to go out there and tell this guy that. He says, master, you the one they looking for, you go out there. He says, go out there and do what I told you. So he goes out there and he looks up on that chariot and he says, Commander, I'm just delivering a message. Y'all have heard that old saying, don't shoot the messenger? He says, I'm just delivering the message. I told him to come out, but he wouldn't. He said, go down there to the Jordan and dip 7 times and you'll be clean. And before the words gets out of his mouth, I guarantee you could hear the door slam. He's back inside. And rightfully so, because it made Naaman so mad that Naaman probably would have cut his head off if he'd have been standing out there. Because Naaman is not only mad, Naaman is disappointed. He come to get something cured, and it ain't happened. So he is mad as a wet hen. He tells his men, let's go. I shouldn't have never come. I don't know why I decided to do this. It was a waste of time. So while he's still a-fussing, a couple of his men come up and say, look, master, you come a long way, and you've done everything you know to do to get rid of this terrible disease you got. You done prayed to your gods, it ain't worked. Why don't you just go ahead and do it? If he'd have told you to do something great, you'd have done that. Do this. You ain't got nothing to lose. Well, that ain't hardly true. You're going to find out in a minute. So Naaman decides, I'll do it. I'll go down there. Well, he rides off down there to the river. He's standing up in that chariot, and he's looking out across that river. And it ain't the cleanest river in the world. He gets off that chariot, he takes his helmet off and that 3-sided hat off. A couple of his men probably get down there and they're holding his stuff as he's taking it off. Now let me tell you what, people. I don't know how much he stripped off in our day and time. It could be to your skivvies. But he's letting people see something that ain't nobody ever seen but his wife. This is the most belittling, humbling thing that he's ever been in his life. And it's going to get worse. The men are looking at a body that is just eat up with leprosy. So Naaman, he wades out there in the water ankle deep, knee deep, waist deep. I want y'all to see this picture. Chest deep. And he takes a deep breath. Now, I tell you, I got to stop there, and I'll tell you why. I can't get past this without my mind. I hope Naaman didn't hold his nose, because if he did, that's a girl thing, don't you know? Naaman is out there in the water chest deep. Now, y'all got to understand, we read that pretty quick, but that ain't what happened. Naaman holds his breath. He goes down, dips one time. He comes up. He dips 2 times. He comes up. He dips 3 times. He comes up. He looks like a yo-yo. 4 times. He comes up. 5 times. Ain't this taking a long time? 6 times. He's still got leprosy. And 7 times he comes up clean as a baby's skin. He looks at his arms, and man, they're clean. Y'all seen people try to run through the water? He's a high-stepping trying to get up on the bank now. He wants to look at the rest of his body. He wants to look at his legs and his stomach, and they're clean. Well, you can know what he done. He was so happy. He went crazy. He's dancing and singing, and his men join in. They have just seen a miracle. And one just happened to Naaman. He's clean. Now I'll tell you, there ain't a man in this room could stand up to Naaman. Not the first. And all God asks us to do is something simple. So, the imitation jaws, what I was saying.